Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with Rachel Cunliffe, Senior Associate Editor at the New Statesman, and the political editor of the Spectator, Katy Balls, with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So, to the front pages then. Let's start with the Metro and the first plane load of British people evacuated from Sudan landing in Cyprus, hours after they were told to dash unescorted through its embattled capital to an airstrip, the Metro reports. While the Eye says British troops are ready to use force as evacuation efforts continue to get UK citizens out of Sudan. The Telegraph has the headline, Harry court claims leave coronation peace hopes in tatters. The Guardian is also reporting on that story with claims that the late Queen threatened Rupert Murdoch's media firm with legal action over phone hacking. The Financial Times is on the US President Joe Biden's announcement that he will seek a second term in the White House, while the Daily Mirror says desperate families received 3 million emergency food parcels last year, with 1 million of them for children. The chief economist at the Bank of England has said British people must accept they are worse off and stop asking for more pay. That is the lead for the Daily Mail. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. So let's head straight to our guests then. Rachel Cunliffe from the New Statesman and Katy Balls from the Spectator. Welcome to both of you. Katy, why don't you start with The Guardian then, and the very latest pictures of some of those Britons scrambling to get out of Sudan, unescorted, as we said there. Does it appear, though, that the government, via the Ministry of Defence, are getting their act together?
I think there's definitely a sign of, I think improvement might be too bold, but if you think about the mood music yesterday, speaking to senior Tories figures involved, there was a pessimism that perhaps the UK government had missed the boat when it came to offering a way out for UK citizens. And there is definitely some unrest out of the fact that diplomats had managed to evacuate first. So I think the fact that one flight has gone, we're told more later today, does at least suggest that there is a plan in motion. It's obviously a very complicated situation geographically, also politically, but just in terms of how you do this. But it definitely feels a little bit more, I think, as though there is a path as to whether mistakes have been made and how much chaos there will be. That I think that remains to be seen.
Well, certainly the Ministry of Defence has released the first pictures then of the people getting off that flight in Cyprus, pointing out that further flights will follow throughout tonight, and tomorrow's work continues to move UK nationals to safety. As you can see, some of the people offloading that plane, the bus there from the airport perimeter standing by to take them. Much relief for them, no doubt. The problem seems to be that this airfield north of the capital is currently being run by the Germans, Rachel, and Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, is suggesting that the UK will take it over effectively tomorrow, which means they can start getting more people out, because the window of opportunity is this ceasefire, isn't it?
Yes, there's a 72-hour ceasefire, and the efforts are obviously to get as many people out as possible. The first Brits on that plane, as we have seen, but there are thousands more left. 2,000 people applied for evacuation, and the question is really how many flights are going to be able to take off in that time period. There's also talk of trying to do a sea evacuation, moving people to the port and getting them out that way. And the line from the government is very much that they are doing this at the first available safe opportunity, and that when it comes to sort of a mass evacuation like this, you obviously need to plan it carefully, and it made sense to get diplomatic personnel out first because they were directly being targeted. But just looking at the situation, what other countries have been doing, it does look as if perhaps the planning stage of Britain's evacuation hadn't been done, the preparation hadn't been done as much as you might hope. And there are also questions about the conflict itself and how much preparation, how much that was foreseen by British diplomats and by the Foreign Office here, because we've been talking about this over the last couple of days like it came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. Tensions have been rising for some time, and you would hope that there are people in in our diplomatic service and in the Foreign Office who are keeping an eye, in the military even, on exactly these kinds of situations and have plans in place for when they need to act very quickly. So I think even when this evacuation is over, there'll be some very challenging, very tough questions for the Foreign Office to answer.
Yes, we saw the Times there. Make your own way to get that airlift. The Metro Run for Your Lives is their headline. Now, Ben Wallace was quite defensive about this, was he not? Saying there's not a one-size-fits-all. We can't really offer advice. Some parts of Khartoum are fighting, some are not. Some people will be able to access it easily, others will not. Suggesting that's the reason they've had to be careful and circumspect in what they're saying. And the reason they had to get the diplomats out so quickly is that's where the fighting is. The two sides had their headquarters nearby, and there was a direct threat from that. I mean, is that fair enough, do you think, that there's, people are so disparate, they can't be specific about whether it's safe for you to leave right now, Katy?
It's clearly a very complicated situation. I think on the diplomats, it's clearly, and you've seen that today, a bad looking way to get diplomats out before UK nationals who are stuck there, particularly when they're saying they can't get on phone lines. They're being told they don't have food where they're staying, and they're very frightened. But there was also, I think, quite a plausible case being made. There was more of a direct threat on the diplomats, partly for the reasons you just mentioned. And therefore, I think there's lots of comparisons at the moment between, will this be a repeat of Afghanistan, which was clearly a very chaotic evacuation. I think that it's too soon to say for sure, but you can see the government trying to learn from some of the mistakes of the past. So, for example, you had James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, last week cut his trip short to get back, I think in anticipation that the situation could get worse. Now, that might not be something which has a huge impact on the people who are stuck there. But of course, it is quite different to Dominic Raab during Afghanistan, where we had the Foreign Secretary at the time on a holiday and a big debate about whether the sea was open or not. So I think you can see an attempt at least to learn the lessons. But with these things, it's really hard because what the government can say in public isn't necessarily what's going on behind the scenes, because it's just such a complicated situation.
Yes, chaotic like Afghanistan, but in a sense, Afghanistan was a bit easier, was it not? We had 20 days of notice to get people out there, a military footprint already established. The airport was controlled by the US and the UK in parts too. There's nothing like that, is there, in Sudan, Rachel? And looking at the eye, they're talking about the terms of service, if you like, for the military. UK troops are ready to use force in this airlift. They will be able to engage militia forces if the operation comes under attack. That's what the paper's saying.
Yeah, it's all a lot more chaotic than Afghanistan. The Taliban gave notice and they also offered a window where they basically said, here's your deadline, get your people out, and countries had to move very fast towards that deadline, and clearly a lot of mistakes were made, particularly when it comes to Afghan nationals who were assisting our forces and our embassies there, who we weren't able to get out. But at least there was a time frame. This is not a government kind of kicking the UK forces out. This is a civil conflict. It's a lot more uncertain, and the argument from the Defence Ministry has been that it kind of wasn't necessarily safe to give people advice and tell them where to go while the fighting was going on, which is why this ceasefire is crucial. But that line there in the eye about the army being able to engage private militias just sort of shows how uncertain and how chaotic it is. As Katy said, it's a highly complex situation, and there's probably more things that we don't know at the moment than that we do. The criticism of the UK government, I think, is coming simply by looking at the actions of other governments to get their people out, and the sense, possibly unfair, but the sense that they have done more preparation and more planning for this scenario than we have.
Yes, well, certainly the promises of more flights tonight. So we'll keep an eye on the situation from Akrotiri in Cyprus to this airfield, the Wadi Saidna airfield north of Khartoum. In the meantime, let's move on to Joe Biden. Let's get the job finished. Fascinating this, isn't it? Or sets up the prospect of a fascinating contest next year, Katy. But the age issue has certainly been raised.
Yes, I think there are some who question Joe Biden's articulateness in his current term, let alone a second. Obviously, very much an aging politician, older than any of the current political leaders here in the UK. And I think it's an interesting one in the sense, is it best for the Democrats if they stay with Joe Biden? There's so much uncertainty about the Republican candidate. It does feel as though there is a chance we're heading to a repeat situation of a Joe Biden Donald Trump election, one in which I think the Democrats probably would feel better in a way Joe Biden going against Donald Trump than another candidate. But you do wonder if you are going to have some Democratic challenges come out, because there have been concerns about the way things have been going for a while now.
Yes, and he urged voters to help him thwart the extremists. It's the fight for democracy against those who backed the Capitol riots. That's the framing of this so far, Rachel.
Yes, you could see images there as he's announcing. Against the backdrop, you've got images of the January 6th Capitol riot, and that has been a very effective messaging strategy for the Democrats. Even people US citizens who would normally vote Republican, who don't like the Democrats, that incident, seeing the interaction, and particularly seeing the response from Donald Trump and indeed from the Republican Party in the wake of that, not wanting to see it as a coup and to take it as seriously as you might hope that any party would in a democratic country, that has really harmed the Republicans among kind of centrist, moderate voters, or even those who are sort of leaning Republican. So it's not surprising that Joe Biden is capitalizing on that. It's also not surprising that he wants another go at it, given that that let's finish the job. That's kind of a classic election slogan for a president seeking a second term. But the age thing, that is notable. He's currently 80. He'll be 82 at the time of the election. Trump obviously is 76. This is the idea of a rerun now with these two men who are at that stage of their life. There are questions being asked about, are they the best candidates? Are they the freshest candidates? Are they the candidates with the most energy? And is a rerun of that particular grudge match really the best thing for American politics right now? But it is looking increasingly likely that it will be Trump who gets the nomination, in case, unless something, one of the court cases against him radically derails that. And I imagine Team Biden are thinking, well, it worked once, let's try it again.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Sets up quite a contest, certainly. Let's take a look at the Daily Telegraph now. Katy, Harry court claims leave coronation peace hopes in tatters. Multiple allegations coming out of Prince Harry's legal team. One, that his brother settled for a big sum. Two, the late Queen backed the Duke of Sussex's bid for an apology, but Charles blocked it. So take it away.
Yeah, it's many developments just in time for the coronation. And I think there were initially hopes that the coronation of King Charles would be a moment the family could come back together after obviously a very difficult period. From all the briefings, it feels as though Prince William is not in a place to forgive his brother over his memoir. But could have this been the moment? And I think it seems from the Telegraph piece, and also more generally, the develops in this court case are just going to add to the tensions that already exist. And now, ultimately, when it comes to this, the suggestion is that Prince William accepted a settlement when it came to, obviously, this Murdoch payment. This comes as Prince Harry, who we know is one to take on the UK press, he has a history of doing it, is charting his own course. And the paper also says that they do not believe that Prince William knew about what Prince Harry is going to say ahead of it being made public, and therefore could further strain the relationship. So I think you have two stories here. One is of a family which is pretty broken, and there's little sign of reconciliation, even ahead of such a big event for both the family and the country. And then the second is, of course, about the press and the different approaches from the royal family to that.